Everybody, welcome. Please take some food. We start with thanking the host. Lori, thanks very much for hosting tonight. And the night before you leave on a trip, also, so that's big. It's very nice. Usually we make this year the first night of Chanuka, but this year, thank God, we had a simcha last night, so preclude us being in two places at once. So we're doing it now tonight. And so Mazel Tov for Simchas. And I'll dedicate this year to Nishmat Saba Timorati Chava Bracha Bat Ben Zion Halevi. Was your was really yesterday, but I still say there's some Shav and Aliyah, and you know what I mean. Let's learn a little bit. Open with a story. Keep people like stories, and it's Chanukah, so I thought it'd be apropos. It's the story of the Bluzhever Rebbe. The Bluzhever Rebbe was ensnared by the dragnet of the Nazis, Yamach Shemam. But at one point, early on in the war, in 1939, he was actually still under Soviet control. He ran away from his town to get to Lvov. And when he arrived in Lvov, he settled in there with many other Jews. You recall there was a pact between the Soviet Union and the Nazis, Yamach Shemam and Yamach Shemam. So they had a pact between them. The von Ribbentrop Pact, a non-aggression pact between the two of them. And therefore, Jewish people who ran away from the Nazis suddenly found themselves under the control of the Soviets. So it was Erev Chanukah that everybody in the Soviet Union, of course, had to have some kind of a job that would show the Soviets that they were useful. You had to be useful. You had to be doing something productive. So the Bluzhever Rebbe, Yisrael Shpira, he took a job as an insurance collector. And his job was just that. He was an insurance man, and it seems that a bunch of the Rebbes did exactly the same thing. So it was that, for reasons they didn't really know, there was a meeting called in the town of Lvov for all insurance agents on a particular night. What night? The first night of Chanukah. And the Bluzhever Rebbe wanted to get out of it. And on the way to the meeting, preliminary meeting, the day which would be called Erev Chanukah, he was thinking the whole way over to the, party office, how he's going to finagle his way out so that he could spend Chanukah with his Hasidim. He gets to the office, and he sits down. They usher him into the office of presumably his supervisor. That's a big portrait of Stalin. And on the way in the building, he took out his snuff box from tobacco and started stuffing it up his nose in order to cause his nose to turn red and to cause a sneezing fit. And so he came into the room of his supervisor, and he was sitting in front of him, sneezing uncontrollably. And he said, "I'm terribly sorry. It looks like tonight I won't be able to come to the insurance agent's meeting. I have a terrible cold." The man sat back in his chair, and he leaned back with a broad smile. He said, "You know, it's funny. There was a man who was here about an hour ago who mysteriously had exactly the same problem as you." So the Bluzhever Rebbe is thinking very quickly. He's thinking, who could it be? The Bayaner Rebbe is also here in Lvov. I bet he did the same thing. He didn't know what to say. Now he said to the supervisor, "I'll tell you the truth. It's winter and it's cold. It happens that a bunch of us in the same community would come down with the same ailment, and I can't make it." The man pushed his chair back and he walked out of the room. He came back smiling ear to ear. And he sat down at the desk again and he said, "Sir, I just went to go check our Jewish calendar and I figured out the cause of your terrible ailment. And I just want you to know that really you and the other fellow with the mysterious cold should really be spending this night and all future nights in Siberia for having the temerity to lie to me, an officer of the Soviet Union. However," he continued, "I will let you go tonight because I am the son of the Shoichet of Mezhbizh. Go enjoy your Chanukah." End of story. This story was told in the early 70s to Yafa Elyach, the famous Holocaust scholar. And I open with it because I want to speak to you tonight about a topic that I hope you'll indulge me will not seem that it is too far afield from the world of Chanukah. Indeed, it will be, I think, germane to Chanukah. I want to talk to you tonight about ideologies. And I've entitled tonight's shiur, Searching for New Light on Chanukah, when Judaism first confronted a new ideology. And many of us are aware of the reality that Marxism, all utopic visions, but particularly socialism, Marxism, was incredibly attractive to many, many Jews in the late 19th century and the early 20th century. And in far-flung places of the world, in what became known as the Soviet Empire, many, many Jews left their religious moorings in order to join up with the movement that was meant to be, in principle, at least in prospect, a movement of great social justice, a movement that championed the rights of individuals, but seeing them in the context of a collective, and looking for, basically, you could say, a secular messianic vision of a world that could be perfected because of the corruptions of the world. So, tonight's shiur will be unlike previous shiurim where we've talked about the placement of where the Chanuka goes in the house, or the mitzvah Pirsumei Nisa, or the formulations of Reb Chaim Brisker of how to understand notions related to the Pirsumei Nisa, the Hallel, the Hodah, how to formulate it. And I'm going off book tonight. I'm handing out these sheets, and we'll get started presently. And I'll open with a great Talmid Chacham from the 20th century, whose name was Reb Shlomo Wolbe. Zecher Tzadik V'Kadosh Livrach. I was zocher to know his grandson, Aryeh Wolbe, L'havdim L'chaim V'Nechaim. Both overlapped in Fairfield. He was in the Kollel in Bridgeport and lived in Fairfield. His grandfather, Reb Shlomo Wolbe, was not only a great mind in Torah, but apparently his grandson himself reported to me, his grandfather had in the house stacks and stacks of works of psychology, particularly of Jean Piaget. He was apparently extremely well read. He did not have a formal degree in psychology or any kind of mental health profession, and yet he was apparently incredibly attuned to psychological matters. So, if you open with me to the first page, page 2, really, what we'll talk about tonight is the great drive and the need, the human need for renewal. We talk about this every day in our tefillah. We mention that God recreates or renews creation all the time. It's the first line here in orange, page 2. Amer la'aretz la'darim alea b'rachamim. Uvetuva mechadesh b'choyim tamid ma'aseh v'reshit. Right? He illuminates the world and those who live upon it with compassion. And in his goodness, he renews. In his benevolence, he renews every day, ongoing, perpetual, the acts of creation. Marabu masech Hashem, how many are your works, God? How great, but in the quantitative sense. Kulam b'chachma asita malach haaretz kinyanecha. The world is filled with your wisdom. The world is filled with your creations and possessions. That word is the same word here, kinyanecha, that which you are acquiring of as a result of having made it. Welcome. There's still sheets going around, yeah? You want to join? Okay. So, this is from his Sefer Da'at Shlomo, the Ma'amar Yimei Ratzon. We're going to read it together to try to understand the idea, and I hope you'll find some resonance, perhaps, tonight and tonight's shiur generally, but it's even from this piece, to some contemporary trends that perhaps some of us have been exposed to over the last period of time. Uchamo behabriya, page 2. Uchamo behabriya, shekol ziv ha'olam mitgala b'tchatshut hayom yomit davka, just as in creation, in the natural world, the radiance of the world is revealed through its renewal on a daily basis. Kain b'Torah, it's true as well in the world of Torah. Shekol hanoam mitgala b'hitchadshut ba davka uve'emet rav amerchak ben hamitchadesh b'Torah l'mishachai ba derech shigra. The beauty or the pleasantness of Torah is actually revealed through the notion of novelty, of having a sense of hitchadshut, which means renewal or discovering something new. And there is a great distance, a chasm, you could say, that I'm paraphrasing, but that differentiates between a person who can find novel ideas within Torah as opposed to someone who lives in a very routine manner. Ki ein kol safa meshutefet b'neim. There isn't even a common language between these two types of people. A person who holds some new, novel idea within Torah in their hand, they feel a certain taste, a certain truth of Torah. And the other person who does not enjoy this chidush, this novel idea, whatever the concept might be within Torah, is almost in another world. They don't understand. They don't have the same language to share. Ko gadol kocha shel hitchadshut ba'olam uvaTorah. So great is the power of renewal within the world and within Torah. Now I'm going in for it. Now we're going into it. This was just sort of introductory. So now, second paragraph. Gam goyim margishin bezeh. The nations also understand and feel this. B'higia ha'olam, he wrote this in 1950 something. B'higia ha'olam liyedei amida v'shigra. When the world comes to a point that is of being stationary and of routine, kulam mechakim litchadshut. Everyone is waiting for something new. Ubevo adam bal ideya chadasha kulam koftzim aleh. When some man arrives with a new idea, a new approach, everyone jumps on it. The people who seize upon this new idea, they feel somehow like, right now my life starts. Now I'm animated by something, I'm excited. The world could be divided. It can be divided between the people who are seized with the concept that is new and those who are left behind who are not seized with it. The people simply don't even understand each other. They don't even have a common language with which to understand the world. This is exactly what happened, he writes, in the last century. You can fill in the blank, even if you don't read Hebrew so well. Socialism. שהסוציאליזם הוא חידוש כזה בעולם, שכל האנושות נחלקה לשני חלקים בגללה, ואין הבנה ביניהם. It is such a great ideal. It's so new in the world. This, again, circa 1950. Remember where we are in 1950. The policy of containment has hardly even been articulated. Right? It's only a few years earlier that the United States comes up with that idea. We're going to contain communism. America's already gone to war in Korea by this point, early 50s, 52, 53. So they're trying to stop it in its tracks. But it is then, not today, but then, you put yourself back there, some of the people around this table, I read about it in books, I heard about it from my parents, but those of you who remember it, it seized many, many people. וכן אנו רואים היום שהסוציאליזם הוא חידוש כזה בעולם, שכל האנושות נחלקה לשני חלקים בגללה ואין הבנה ביניהם. There is a split in the world between the people who are into socialism and those who are not. It's like a dividing line. You can divide all people in these two realms. So ascendant was the notion of socialism, communism, etc. at a certain point. Now we look back at it maybe in sort of almost a halcyon manner. There's the halcyon days when things were simple. There were the good guys and the bad guys. It was the light and the dark. But many Jews left Judaism for socialism. They did. It's a reality. And you can read about it even in the interwar period in Warsaw. I'm very fond of the Piasetzner. He's writing about how many Jews have left the path to become secular and how many have left because they're so attracted to socialism as a secular ideology, but one that promised all sorts of things that would upend the world. And it divided the world into two camps. And so he writes the following. There's a pasuk in Sefer Dvarim, I actually gave it to you on the top of page 3, which we read on 2 times in the year, Parshat Vayetchanan and on Tisha B'Av. The laning on Tisha B'Av begins when you will have children and children's children, v'noshantem ba'aretz, and you will become, you could say, old in the land. V'yishchatem v'asitem pesel tmunat kol v'asitem hara be'enei Hashem elokecha lachiso, and you will destroy and make an idol and some kind of image, and you will do that which is evil in the eyes of Hashem, your God, to infuriate him. Now, and Rashi here just tells us, I gave you Rashi here also, v'noshantem, Ramaz lahem sheiglu mimena lesof 852 shana. Kiminin v'nos shantem, the gematria of the word v'nos shantem is 852, and that's how many years it would be until at the end of 852 years there would be an exile for having been for so long. Now that's a gematria, but look with me at what the Rav Shlomo Wolbe writes. I'm back on page 2, second to last paragraph. Kitolid banim uvnei v'nim v'nos shantem ba'aretz. V'nos shantem, you become aged in the land. That's the destruction. That's the number of years that they were in the land. The process of being in the land of Israel became one that was old. It was old hat. It was expected. It was an entitlement. Bleed chadshut, there was no sense of renewal there. V'zeh hachurban, the beginning of destruction comes from a sense of the static, without any dynamism going on in the land of Israel itself. And so he writes, this is the process. We need some kind of renewal. It is necessary. If we don't find renewal within that which is old, then we will find renewal from another source, not the source of our own culture, meaning our Torah, etc. We'll find it from something else. It's a human drive, a human need. That's what Shlomo Wolbe is essentially arguing, and he's giving the example, which when he wrote this, he actually gave it as talks to his yeshiva. It is actually the time of this ideology that is still very much alive, and it's communism, and it's a whole different way of looking at the world, and it's like different vocabulary practically for understanding the human condition. And so he quotes a pasuk that's actually from Parshat Achrei Mot, from Parshat Ha'azinu. Yizbechu shedim lo eloka. If they will offer offerings to demons and not to God, chadashim mikarov bao lo shiarum avotechem. New things, new ones will come from close that were not assayed by one's forebears. Ma'u chadashim. What does this mean? That it is new. If we cannot find a sense of renewal within the tradition, within Judaism, within Torah, we're going to find it. That's the human condition. It's the Jewish human condition as well, being a subset of the human race. So we're going to find it somewhere. We're going to look for it as an ideology. So if you turn the page to page 3, ignore the bottom of the page, which means everyone's going to look at the bottom of the page, but don't go there yet. This is the test of a person to themselves. A person should ask themselves, where do they find a sense of renewal? Like, where do I feel like, wow, I'm renewed now as a person? All right? So you could fill in the blank. I would say, exercise. I find renewal in exercise. I find renewal in entertainment. Do I find renewal in Torah? That's what he's asking. Does one find chidush, that which is novel, that which is fresh and creative? Does one find it within the world of Torah? Is it outside? And he says the essence of a human being is they should find a way to renew themselves within the world of Torah. If one finds that routine has seized their life, taken hold of them, they're suspected of eventually being seized by that which is novel from outside. I cannot be silent about this matter. And he's talking to his students, but I can't be silent because that will bring people to shirk their sense of yoke and commitment. If they will make as their flag, their banner, something that is novel, that did not grow in the world of Torah, but rather from foreign sources, they plucked it out. What will happen? The person will start to realize that which is to do with Torah is old and antiquated. By the way, 1950s, how many Jewish publishing houses were there? How much Jewish music was being written? The answer is low and lower. Yeah? How much Jewish poetry? It's very low. Everything low. 1950s. Think about what we're up to today. Everyone can name 2-3 Jewish publishing houses. No. How many translations of the Talmud were there in 1950 into, let's say in America, into English? Maybe Cincino. What else did you have? That's it, right? Now think about what we're up to. So it's hard to retroject, but I'm asking you to retroject, as you'll soon see why it is, hopefully, germane to the contemporary moment as well. But I like to use examples from history when we can look at them in the rearview mirror in order to assess, okay, what was their net impact while they were unfolding? We know now, okay, it fell to pieces. Communism died. And there are those who argue as a great nace how it died. The most powerful empire, arguably, at the time, remember they were going neck and neck, us and them. This I do remember. Without a shot, the whole thing came apart. I don't know. Do you remember I remember where I was when Boris Yeltsin took over. Does anyone else remember? It was a bloodless coup. No one was killed. There was no army. I could tell you where I was. It was a great family moment for me. I was sitting in our Cutlass Supreme station wagon in Muncie, New York, with my father listening to it on the radio while my mother and my sisters were in Shandy's buying dresses. And I remember we're listening to the whole thing. My father's saying, "It's unbelievable. Do you understand what's going on here? It's 1900. Do you understand what's going on?" So, I don't know. They're changing leaders. I was trying to make sense of it. I knew about perestroika and glasnost. The whole thing fell apart. It just, like a puff of smoke, just evaporated. But 1950 something, people really thought, my goodness, they want to take over the whole world. The hammer and sickle is going to fly over, over every town and hamlet in the world. So he writes here that if a person, he's talking to students 1950s, early 50s, if a person will just find that their Torah has become stale and staid, and they find renewal and freshness in something else, and here the boogeyman, if you will, was socialism. So a person will find unity in the Workers' Party, and they will no longer find it in the unity of the Charedim. Is it Charedim? We're not trying to blame others, but to teach ourselves. And the learning here is that I'm trying to teach you. The lesson is how much life depends on the sense of renewal within Torah. He's trying to encourage his students. It's not enough to just keep learning. It's the same thing again. Find new things to understand within Torah. Each person on their own level. So we find ourselves in a particular moment that those of us who live more, I would say, hermetically sealed is not the right word, but in a more insular manner, by which I don't mean we're not using the internet of access to the world of ideas, but we turn, at least one of our circles is around the shul and the community and the kosher pizza store or whatever else, and the farm store, and for kids, the Jewish camp and whatnot. But there are, at this moment, great culture wars that are actually unfolding. And I believe that we're at a particular time now where it is crucial to start getting the word out. Let it start right here tonight. And this is unlike other shiurim that I've given in this slot, where I talked about, one year was about technology, one year was about, other Jewish history issues in Israel. Tonight I want to focus on what I think is unfolding now that is has the potential to be ruinous to our culture altogether. One of the people that I've been studying over the last period of time, I highly recommend, you can find his lectures online, is a Canadian psychology professor. His name is Jordan B. Peterson. He's somewhat controversial in Canada. He made headlines. Not only he was a visiting professor at Harvard for a few years, he's written a number of books, but he made his name on a bill called Bill C-16, which the Canadian government sought to pass, which would essentially criminalize a situation where a person teaching at a university or works as a civil servant did not address other people by the personal pronoun that they wanted to be called by. So he said, look, I could call you whatever I want because I choose to, but if the government's going to get involved in my free speech and I have to now have legislated people's definition of gender, that's encroaching on my ability to have free speech. That was the issue at hand. Okay, but as a sidebar, he, I think, has a lot of resonance for a certain swath of the culture. I will say I don't agree with everything that the man says, but there's a lot of chachma, and as the Chazal teach us, if they tell you that there's chachma in the world, in the nations of the world, you should believe them. I think this is a person who's a chacham. That's my view, not just because we're both Canadians. I actually think he's a chacham. So we're going to read a few pages from his book, 12 Rules for Life. He is just so you know, he's a devout Christian. He's not Jewish, and he's still a professor now in Canada of psychology. And he makes the rounds. He gives public talks, and he's very concerned about where culture is going. And we should realize that those of us in this room, depending on our age and life experience, may not have been exposed to this as much as the generation now that is on a secular campus, where this is sort of the zeitgeist, this is the spirit of the times that animates so much of what happens in the classroom, on the campus. I've heard this from many different people over the years that I've spoken to, just informally, what's going on, what some of the things they're talking about. So this is from his book, 12 Rules for Life. It's about the concept of postmodernism. If you don't know what that is, here you're about to find out what it means. And the long arm of Marx. So let's understand. I'm taking you into the middle of this book. These disciplines, he means postmodernism, draw their philosophy from multiple sources. All are heavily influenced by the Marxist humanists. One such figure is Max Horkheimer, who developed critical theory in the 1930s. Any brief summary of his ideas is bound to be oversimplified, but Horkheimer regarded himself as a Marxist. He believed that Western principles of individual freedom or the free market were merely masks that served to disguise the true conditions of the West: inequality, domination, and exploitation. He believed that intellectual activity should be devoted to social change instead of mere understanding, and hoped to emancipate humanity from its enslavement. Horkheimer and his Frankfurt School of Associated Thinkers, first in Germany, later in the US, aimed at a full-scale critique and transformation of Western civilization. Okay? So he was, they call a Marxist humanist. More important in recent years has been the work of French philosopher Jacques Derrida, leader of the postmodernists, who came into vogue in the late 1970s. Derrida described his own ideas as a radicalized form of Marxism. Marx attempted to reduce history and society to economics, considering culture the oppression of the poor by the rich. When Marxism was put into practice in the Soviet Union, China, Vietnam, Cambodia, and elsewhere, economic resources were brutally redistributed. Remember, in the name of social justice and equality. Private property was eliminated, and rural people forcibly collectivized. The result, tens of millions of people died. Hundreds of millions more were subject to oppression rivaling that still operative in North Korea, the last classic communist holdout. The resulting economic systems were corrupt and unsustainable. The world entered a prolonged and extremely dangerous Cold War. He goes on, I clipped it out. But that's the basic gist of it, right? Marxism, we know, it killed itself because it killed tens of millions of people. So whatever was good in the ideology ended in rage and ruin. And everybody realized, well, this just can't go on. Solzhenitsyn, the Gulag Archipelago, bottom of page 4 here. Solzhenitsyn argued that the Soviet system could have never survived without tyranny and slave labor, that the seeds of it for its worst excesses were definitively sowed in the time of Lenin, for whom the Western communists still served as apologists, and that it was propped up by endless lies, both individual and public. Its sins could not be blamed on a simple cult of personality, as its supporters continued to claim. Solzhenitsyn documented, remember that was in the days of Stalin. When Stalin died, if you will recall, if you remember your history, Khrushchev gave what was known as the secret speech, where he basically said Stalin, he had too many excesses. The excesses include killing tens of millions of people through his ideology. So they said after him, well, we're going to fix it, we just won't do that. Solzhenitsyn documented the Soviet Union's extensive mistreatment of political prisoners, its corrupt legal system, and its mass murders, and showed in painstaking detail how these were not aberrations, but direct expressions of the underlying communist philosophy. No one could stand up for communism after the Gulag Archipelago, not even the communists themselves. This did not mean that the fascination Marxist ideas had for intellectuals, particularly French intellectuals, disappeared. It merely transformed. Some refused outright to learn. Sartre denounced Solzhenitsyn as, quote, a dangerous element. Derrida, more subtle, substituted the idea of power for the idea of money and continued on his merry way. Such linguistic sleight of hand gave all the barely repentant Marxists, still inhabiting intellectual pinnacles of the West, the means to retain their worldview. Society, if you missed all of this is the 2 lines you need. Society was no longer repression of the poor by the rich. It was oppression of everyone by the powerful. So the argument of Jordan B. Peterson is where Marxism, we could see, was completely bankrupt. The people who truly believed in it and believed that actually all of society could be seen in economic terminology, and that actually the proletariat, the working class, are just completely oppressed by the bourgeoisie, by the rich, by the people who have money and power. It was all about the economic way of seeing the world. That was shown to be a bankrupt modality when you start imposing on people. But the philosophers who still held to this idea just erased the word money and put in the word power. And now everything is about oppression of everyone by the powerful. Turn to the next page, page 5. Now he explains the idea. And I know at this point some of you are wondering, what does that have to do with Chanuka? Stand by. We're about to go in for a landing. But you need this background to understand the confrontation. According to Derrida, hierarchical structures, in this, when you read this paragraph, you can ask yourself, is postmodernism, in this rendering, Jordan B. Peterson's rendering, is it friendly or is it hostile to Judaism? Spoiler alert, you already know the answer. But here we go. According to Derrida, hierarchical structures emerged only to include the beneficiaries of that structure and to exclude everyone else who were therefore oppressed. Even that claim wasn't sufficiently radical. Derrida claimed that divisiveness and oppression were built right into language, built into the very categories we use to pragmatically simplify and negotiate the world. There are quote-unquote women only because men gain by excluding them. There are, quote, males and females, end quote, only because members of that more heterogeneous group benefit by excluding the tiny minority of people whose biological sexuality is amorphous. Science only benefits the scientists. Politics only benefits the politicians. In Derrida's view, hierarchies exist because they gain from oppressing those who are omitted. It is this ill-gotten gain that allows them to flourish. Now, I can hear one little echo of something that's very positive, which is we know what it means to suffer, and Yitzhak Mitzrayim is don't oppress the stranger and the ger. That's a Jewish value. But this is something else. This is that all of society, everything that exists, gender, everything is about power trying to crush the powerless, and everything should be viewed in that prism. That's the fundamental notion of postmodernism. There are others, but that's one of the main ones. Derrida famously said, although he denied it later, il n'y a pas d'hors texte, often translated as there is nothing outside the text. His supporters say that this is a mistranslation and that the English equivalent should have been there is no outside text. It remains difficult either way to read the statement as saying anything other than everything is interpretation. And that is how Derrida's work has generally been interpreted. So let me explain what that paragraph means. It means you could take any book, you can read it, and whatever you think the words mean, that's what they mean. It doesn't matter what the author thought. It doesn't matter what critics think. It doesn't matter what English professors think. It doesn't matter what the canon of English literature thinks. Whatever you say, that's what it is. And everything is just about someone having made up their own understanding of whatever the it is that's being analyzed. To say it differently, there is no objective truth. There is no source of authority, and there is no such thing as the right way or an approach that is sanctified by whatever it is. I'm not even talking about Judaism. Sanctified, by the canons of Western thought. It doesn't matter. In one place, Jordan B. Peterson says, you know what the message of Hamlet could be? It's good to kill off your family members, and it's productive temporarily not to kill yourself, to be or not to be. Really, it's a good idea, but temporarily you should just stave it off because it's good to do with as many families as you can. That's upside down, but if you want to read it that way, why do you get to say that it's wrong? Why do you get to say nothing to do with what Shakespeare intended? And so the wheels keep going. Now, he writes, the bottom paragraph here, page 5, it is almost impossible to overestimate the nihilistic and destructive nature of this philosophy. It puts the act of categorization itself in doubt. It negates the idea that distinctions might be drawn between things for any reason other than that of raw power. Biological distinctions between men and women, despite the existence of an overwhelming multidisciplinary scientific literature indicating that sex differences are powerfully influenced by biological factors, science is just another game of power for Derrida and his postmodern Marxist acolytes, making claims to benefit those at the pinnacle of the scientific world. There are no facts. Hierarchical position, reputation as a consequence of skill and competence, all definitions of skill and of competence are merely made up by those who benefit from them, to exclude others and to benefit personally and selfishly. Always. Therefore, inclusion, which has so many positive elements to it, is not just a value, but everything that is not entirely inclusive of everything and everyone is in and of itself part of this hierarchy of power against the powerless. Follow? It's reread everything where you're either paro or you're the slave. But there's no in between. And there's no other reason why any other distinction or category might exist. We're coming to the end of this presentation by Jordan B. Peterson. Please, Jared.
Is he aware that's a complete circularity? Say there is no fact in life, it's itself a fact?
Right.
Is he aware of that? Or is it...
Well, he's right. That's why he's writing what their argument he thinks is bunk for that exact reason.
Okay.
But in the interest of pushing forward this ideology, by the way, when I say this ideology, it's not that people are like giving speeches about this in college. I have a degree in English literature, so even I saw that slide, the late 90s. Apparently, it's a quickening, meaning it happens in the disciplines of the humanities as well as in the sciences, apparently. It's taking root in different places. It's a strange idea, right? There are no facts. What the scientist is not actually true to her craft or his craft. There's simply a plaything that's trying to oppress other people. So they're making up, everything is just made up. That is the claim of the postmodernists.
How do they explain the advances of medicine?
Well, oddly enough, particularly in the mental health sciences, they say, well, the whole thing's just a social construct. Everything's a social construct. So Jordan Peterson says, well, I'm actually a psychologist. And, actually, well, there, of course, there's a social component to mental health. There's a biological component and there's a social component and language component. They're all related. But they've reduced everything to, it's about the powerful trying to oppress the powerless. So everything is always reduced to the people who are the victims and the people who are the oppressors. Always, everything is reduced to that. Here are examples. There are other serious problems lurking in the radical disciplines. Apart from the falseness, page 6, the falseness of their theories and methods, and their insistence that collective political activism is morally obligatory, there isn't a shred of hard evidence to support any of their central claims. That Western society is pathologically patriarchal, that the prime lesson of history is that men rather than nature were the primary source of the oppression of women rather than, as in most cases, their partners and supporters, that all hierarchies are based on power and aimed at exclusion. Hierarchies exist for many reasons, some arguably valid, some not, and are incredibly ancient, evolutionarily speaking. Do male crustaceans oppress female crustaceans? Should their hierarchies be upended? In societies that are well functioning, not in comparison to hypothetical utopia, but contrasted with other existing historical cultures, competence, not power, is a prime determiner of status. Competence, ability, skill, not power. This is obvious both anecdotally and factually. No one with brain cancer is equity-minded enough to refuse the service of the surgeon with the best education, the best reputation, and perhaps the highest earnings. Furthermore, the most valid personality trait predictors of long-term success in Western countries are intelligence, as measured with cognitive ability or IQ tests, and conscientiousness, a trait characterized by industriousness and orderliness. There are exceptions, and entrepreneurs and artists are higher in openness to experience, another cardinal personality trait, than in conscientious, and he goes on to describe it. So to sum up, there is an ideology presently afoot here. By the way, that's the ideology that views Israel as nothing more than an oppressive state, when put in political terms. The state of Israel does not commit crimes. The state of Israel is a crime. The existence of the state of Israel is itself a moral stain. Like that's the assumption. Why? Because there's a population that ab initio, since they are the David in the frame, in the picture, ergo there's a Goliath, and the Goliath is the Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh is the Nazi, and the Nazi should be, what should we do with the Nazis? ... And that's the whole approach. The approach of the radical inclusion. Look, the notion of inclusion, all things in good measure, right? We're a better society, more social justice, that people with whatever it is, special needs should be inclusion, etc. But there is a question, and that's his question. How far does it go? The rereading of every relationship between two people, let alone two cultures, is just about who can dominate the other. That's like a rereading of all of the structures of relationships altogether. And all of the disciplines, science, politics, economics, everything is just reread in this way. According to Peterson, it's the next iteration of the Marxist utopic vision of yesteryear. But instead of talking about economics as the driver, we talk about it in much more broad terms. Follow? Power, influence, but everything is just about that dynamic, and nothing is about any other relationship or dynamic or reasons why things may have been as they are. Doesn't mean they're not without fault and flaw and need correction, but there's this global idea. He makes the point also, and you can see video after video of his detractors. They don't want to even engage him in discussion. They don't want a discussion. They just want to keep pushing the point, but there's no dialogue even. And with that Bill C-16, his point was, I'm not saying I'm not going to call someone the pronoun they ask me to call them, but the government's going to step in. The Canadian government's going to tell me that I'm a criminal for not saying the words that I have to say. I can't live that way, and I won't live that way. Follow? And this has become more of an issue, particularly for people who are, I will say, like us, by which I mean Jewish people who espouse a fealty to a tradition that is actually predicated on the notion of an authority. And an authority that doesn't just mean God, but an authority and its extension of the whole of Judaism. And I will argue, and I hope I'll be wrong, but I will argue based on my read, one man, that we are living at a time of great radicalism that rivals the great radical upending of all that people understood about the world when the Greeks arrived in pagan cultures. Because this is an overarching ideal that now sweeps across all disciplines, sciences and humanities, politics and economics, and even human relationships, even gender itself. Not since the ancient Greeks came into the world, and I say it each year, architecture and mathematics and philosophy and geometry, I forgot, separate discipline from mathematics, and politics and drama and sports, it's all sourced in Western culture, all from the Greeks. I explained to my son the other day, the Romans conquered the Greeks, but the Greeks conquered the Romans, because it's all about the Greco-Roman architecture and the translation of different categories from the world of the Greeks into the Romans, but really it's Greek ideals. The power of these people must have been overwhelming to Jews when they arrived in the Holy Land circa 332 BCE. Overwhelming. And we've learned in previous years, the Gemara about Shimon HaTzadik coming dressed head to toe in the priestly vestments and the garments and the big day kahuna as a Kohen Gadol going out to greet Alexander of Macedon. Not for nothing is that story told. It's not just the encounter of two great world leaders. The point is the encounter of the two cultures is happening right there. One is dressed in his body armor and the other one is dressed in his royal raiments of Kedusha to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the Mikdash. And the two of them meet, as the sun is coming up, right? It's a famous Gemara. Famous means I taught it before and you're supposed to know it, but it's the Gemara in Yuma. Right? And they meet each other, and in the Gemara, Alexander Macedon bows down to Shimon HaTzadik. Right? So all the soldiers, you're bowing to this man, we conquered them. He's in my dreams. In my dreams, I see that man. And in my dreams, he's telling me that we're going to win. And I believe we're going to win. And indeed, they do. They conquered the whole world. Alexander's dead a few years later, but in 332 BCE, that is what happens. They come to the Holy Land, and they import their culture. And they do not oppress the Jews. They do not tell the Jews, you must be like us. But it was the first time in Jewish history, and if Huttner makes this point in Mamar Hay, in the Pachad Yitzchak in Chanuka, it's a longer essay we have time for tonight. He says, in Egypt, there were no mitmatzrim. In Bavel, there were no mitbavlim. There were none who adopted an ideology of the Egyptians or the Babylonians. A, I would say, because there wasn't actually an ideology to adopt, but B, because you weren't going to be a fifth column in a way that was unionized. You weren't going to be a movement that said, let's internalize the notions of postmodernism and bring them to bear against the Judaism that is our moorings. And with the Yavanim, there's a whole class of people called the Mit-Yavnim. They're Hellenized Jews. And they have taken on, it doesn't just mean that they lived a little loose religiously. It means that fundamentally they thought Judaism is broken, Greece will fix it. And even Chazal, we talked about this last year and the year before and the year before and the year before and the year before, the Gemara going back and forth about how Yafta Lakim Liyafet, Yafta Lakim Liyafet, Vishkon Ba'olei Shem, right? That the beauty belongs, the aesthetic beauty is to Yafet, who is the progenitor of Yavan, of Greece, but it has to dwell in the tents of Shem. And it's the Gemara in the Mishnah, the Gemara in Masachet Megillah and Daf Tet. They have this idea that actually there is something redemptive within Greek culture. But a wholesale adoption? So I would argue the following, that what you see on the bottom of page 6, this Gemara, this little story, is not just a story about triumph and of miracle. Of course, it's that in its most basic level, but it's something much more. It's that something really in a paradoxical way that was good happened when Antiochus Epiphanes IV decided to actually legislate decrees against the Jewish people. You see, while it was still just an ideology, it was kind of amorphous. Nobody came for the Jews. They said, come join us. Come to our university with our Greek symbols, then as now. Be part of our culture because it's so attractive, because you too believe that the world is ordered. Don't you believe the world is ordered? You believe God created there was an order in it? Look at our mathematics and our geometry. And there is something positive in it. Don't you like our philosophy? Don't you think about life? We think about life. Philosophy. Come to our academies and learn from us. Don't you want to be serving your creator through your body? So come being part of our Olympics. Mount Olympus, Olympics. We invented sports, drama, expression. These are all wonderful things. But we also think that your Torah is old and antiquated and there's nothing new about it. And here, this was the bright line moment. Now Jews could actually physically say, we have a rallying cry. Until then, and until then means from 332 BCE until circa 168 BCE, it's over 150 years, everything is incredibly amorphous. And the number of chidushim, the number of novel pieces of Torah that we have in that whole period is exactly 0. No books of Tanakh and no Mishnayos. We got nothing. We got basically Shimon HaTzadik, one statement from him, someone named Antigonus Ish Socho, and then the next people after that is already Chachamim who are in the time of Chanuka. Yossi ben Yoezer, Yossi Ish Tzureda. That's how it went. So now with that in mind, now go to the Gemara, now open the Gemara Chanuka, now put yourself back again, it's in the rearview mirror, but put yourself, what did it mean that now suddenly there was a bright line issue? And by the way, it had a very physical manifestation. They didn't, and this is what the Maharal writes this, the Levush writes this. What was the difference between Hanukkah and Purim? Purim was physical annihilation, God forbid, was the threat. So we celebrate very physically. What happened on Hanukkah? The buildings were all left standing. Temples were, the Beit HaMikdash was left. But what did they do? They gutted it from the inside. And didn't mean gutted it. They were making capital improvements. They put a temple over here, an idol over there, pig on the Mizbeach. They do whatever they can to show that this is our place now. You can keep your outside, but we'll be the inside. Okay? Now, my Hanukkah. What is Hanukkah? Not even clear what that question is. What is Hanukkah? What's the word Hanukkah mean? What is the expression? What is the holiday? This is the only history part we have in the whole Gemara about what happened on Hanukkah. The Tana Rabbana. B'chafei b'kislev yomid Hanukkah timnaya inun d'lamispid behon u'd'lo lihitanot behon. And the 25th day of Kislev is the first day of Hanukkah. There's 8 days where one should not give eulogies and should not fast. When the Yavanim broke into the sanctuary, they defiled all of the oil that was in the sanctuary. When they triumphed over the house of the Hasmoneans, the Hashmonaim, conquered them and were victorious upon them. They checked, they didn't find except for one small cruse of oil, which was placed with the seal of the high priest, the Kohen Gadol. And it was only enough to last for one more day. And it lasted for 8 days. A time period later, a year later, maybe something like that. They established them and made them into days that were festive days of Hallel, of praise, and Hoda'ah, and thanksgiving. Rashi says here, Hallel means saying Hallel, Hoda'ah is saying Ala Nisim. So that's the whole history. But now, think about it against the backdrop of what had been happening for 150 years of a competing new set of ideas. And not just one idea about politics or about philosophy or about science. It was everything. And Jews were kind of struggling, like, how are we gonna find ourselves here? We're gonna assert ourselves in this world where all of our assumptions about how the world functions, the people who are not like us have become really what's the word? They're a straw man. None of us is going to bow down to an idol. No one's going to worship the sun. These pagan people who live over here, over there, worship the sun. We're not going to get into that silliness. But then along came Socrates, and along came the Republic. He said, well, it's actually very interesting. There's a lot over here that is interesting and edifying, and what do we have to compete with it? We're not doing very much. The Chiddush was, if you will, seized by another group. And that ideology was taking root, and to see it in the course of a broad spectrum of time. It didn't happen over 2 years, 3 years. The whole Hanukkah story is 168 or thereabouts. Antiochus Levi makes these decrees. The war is from 167 till 164, and so goes our tradition. On the 24th day of Kislev, in the year 164 BCE or thereabouts, they arrive in the Mikdash, and they light the candles the 25th that night. Yeah? Everybody with me? Okay. So now, turn the page 7, and look with me at this this piece of Torah, which is from a good example of a new idea and a chiddush within Torah. And that chiddush, which we're finding a great resurgence in interest in, or maybe just a newfound discovery in the Olam HaTorah, is the world of Chassidut. The world of Chassidut is not a whole new world. It's really, in many ways, a continuation of what existed before. It was the refuah, maybe before the makkah. It's the salve that comes before the wound. First person involved in it is, of course, Rabbi Shaul ben Eliezer, the Baal Shem HaKadosh, the Baal Shem Tov, and then all of those who emerged from his school are known as the Admorim, the various Rebbes from various schools of Chassidut. I'm presenting just one tonight, but we could spend, each shir could be another one of the Rebbes and what they contributed. So this is from the Sfat Emet. The Sfat Emet was very fond of quoting his grandfather, his Zayda, the Chidush Harim, and he writes here on the fifth night of Chanukah, Tov Reish Lamed Aleph. So this is the piece. I'm on the left-hand side. Leil Hey was the fifth night of Chanukah. Amar Adoni Zikni Mori V'Rabi Zechet Tzaddik Livracha L'Chai Olam Haba. Yeah? Zechet Tzaddik L'Chai Olam Haba. Okay, my Zayda said the following. Pirish, he explained, Haragil Bener, when the Gemara uses the expression that a person who will be Ragil Bener, means that one, if you look at footnote 40, it quotes you the line from the Gemara, Ragil Bener, Havyan Leibanim Talmidei Chachamim. That individual will have children who are Talmidei Chachamim, Torah scholars. A Ragil Bener literally means if one is accustomed to light candles. It means the candles of Shabbos and the candles of Chanukah. They will have children who are Talmidei Chachamim. That's the Gemara says. Says the Chidushi Harim, he had again a novel way of looking at things, a new way of looking at things. You see, you know what Chazal were communicating here? Haragil Bener means Lahavi ha'ara v'itchadshut el ha'hergel. Haragil Bener means you take that which is ragil, that which is routine, and you enliven it with a fire. You light candles by that which is routine, and thereby you re-energize it. One has to keep the fire burning until the feet stop walking in the shuk. Tichla regel min shuk, so people stop walking in the shuk. He said tichla regel doesn't just mean feet, it also means when routine will leave the marketplace. You have to keep the fire burning. The chalya ragla tardumai, when these people Tardumians will leave the shuk. That's until then you have to make sure you keep the fire burning, meaning otherwise lassitude will set in, and a sense of stasis will take hold. The point is to get rid of the routine and the natural order. And therefore, Maizedi said, explained also, Ner l'ragli darecha. This is what David HaMelech meant in Tehillim 119. Your words are lights that light my footpath. Tovel b'shemen raglo. The Torah uses that expression. He dips into his foot into oil. He's rereading this. You understand? As you have to dip your routine into energy, into oil, to newfound ideas. V'divrei pi chacham chen. And the words of the wise one are graceful. V'al pi zen nira lefarish shem Chanuka. Says the grandson now, Sfat Emet, that's what the word Chanukah means. Gamkin al hitchadshut. Ki hayu tachat yad malchut Yavan begalut. Because they were under the thumb of the kingdom of Greece in exile. And therefore the word Chanukah refers to a renewal. All of the four kingdoms that we've been engaged in being under their thumb, all of them, it was because we were stuck in nature, in their natural order, and in physicality. There's nothing new under the sun, says the book of Kohelet. That's what it means, the renewal of something. He goes on to describe it, but the basic gist of it is, you know what it means in the Gemara, my Chanukah, what's Chanukah? What's the renewal here that took place on this holiday? The renewal was that they could light lights again. Not physical lights, yeah, that too, that's basic. But there was a great spiritual representation of what these lights were meant to mean vis-a-vis the reassertion of a Jewish culture, and a Torah culture particularly. And the truth is, we daven this every day. I gave you at the beginning, we daven, God, you renew the world every day. But to the end of that bracha that we say every single day of the year without exception, we say, I have it in the orange here on page 7, You renew in your good. It renews in His goodness every day. Masaber, it's the same line at the beginning of the prayer, but now at the end, what does it say? Or chadash al Tzion ta'ir. We're hoping that a new light will shine upon Zion, and we should all be meritorious to receive its light. A spirit of renewal should fall where? On Eretz Yisrael, on Zion, on our culture, on our peoplehood. Now turn to page 8. We'll end with this. Again, these are little drushes that he gave different nights of Hanukkah, different years. But you get a flavor for the idea. And he also, living such as he did in the 19th century, is living already at a time when the winds of modernity are blowing. He's trying to talk to his Hasidim and would-be acolytes about the value and crucial nature of sticking with it and finding new light in Torah. Much of the energy that transpired, not all of it by any means, but much of the energy from a spiritual perspective was reinvigorated by Hasidim. Given their numbers, when you can look at the population numbers, so many tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands that were drawn into the world of Hasidut, which was a really, relatively speaking, a nascent movement. It held such attraction for Jewish people because there was an element of hitchadshut to it. Writes the Sfad Emet in Tafresh Mem Daled, V'timu kol hashmanim shebeheichal. When they came, what did they do? They defiled all of the oil that was in the sanctuary. We read that just before in the Gemara. Shemat mi pi mori v'zikni zal. I heard from my grandfather. Ki hu remez ala machshavot shebemoach. The defiling of the oil in the sanctuary is really itself symbolic language. It means that thought itself was being defiled. V'nira, it seems. Ki be'emer kol echad. It seems that everything is really connected. Shebechinat olam shanat nefesh tlin zeh b'zeh. There's a sefer that was, according to our tradition, Rabbi Soloveitchik writes about it in the Halachic Man. He quotes it there. It's called the Sefer Yetzirah. It's a mystical text. It's ascribed to Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu wrote this book. And that it talks, among other things, it has this principle that it comes up very often in the world of Hasidut, that the world, everything can be divided into three categories. Olam, that we would call space, the world, Shana, time, and Nefesh, the soul. Everything is connected. Just as in the world, there are separated places, and between those places, the inner space of the world we believe to be the Beit HaMikdash. The sanctuary within it, Yoter Pnim, is more internal. Kain Bezman, so too in time, Yishamim Yuchadim, there are special days, Shabbos, Yom Tov, V'chein B'nefesh, even within the spirit of a person. There's a body, there's a guf, there's a nefesh and a neshama. As they breached the temple, as they defiled all of the oil. Again, he already told you the oil isn't literally just the oil. It was a standard for everything that had been happening for 150 years. But the point is, this was now a story that everyone could latch onto and say, now we understand how far it's gone. Kain Gavra Sitra Achra, the other side, had become ascendant, and in time as well. Lachain, therefore, Achar Kach Shinitaru Libot Bnei Yisrael V'nitan Lahem Itchadshut Dichtiv Leiv Tahor Bar Li Elokim V'ruach Nachon Chadesh Bekirbi. They got renewal when they were able to purify themselves. As the psalmist writes in the 51st chapter of Tehillim, that we're studying on Thursdays right now, right? A pure heart did God create within me, and He gave me an appropriate or set spirit. Chadesh Bekirbi was renewed within me. Shebechol Eish Adam Metaheret Libo, when a person purifies their heart, Nitan Lo Hitchadshut Baruach, their spirit can become enlivened. Shebekirbo V'lachein Achash Nitaru Nitan Lahem Hitchadshut Lachein Nikra Chanuka. And that's after they had purified themselves, they received this capability to renew their culture. By the way, the whole world of the Mishnah is then born in the world, and its cradle is actually, or the kiln is actually ancient Greece, in that milieu, that exile. And that's why it's called Chanuka. Because Chanuka means dedication, not just of the space, but dedication of the self, dedication of my soul back to Judaism. And in terms of my thought process, my categories, understanding the world, everything still was related to the souls of the Jewish people. The main thing was, was connected to the souls of the Jewish people, even though there was a mikdash. Ha'ikar avodat ha'adam. Lachein hanusach ba'al hanisim mikodem tshuat hanafashot masart giborim. Before we talked about the salvation of the souls, we say you put the mighty into the hands of the weak, etc. Right? Shua gedola. It was a great salvation. V'achar kach, and after that, what happened? Bo vanecha, your children came, etc. V'tiyaret mikdashecha shehu tikun ha'olam achar tikun ha'nefesh. When can you fix the mikdash? After you fixed yourself. Achar kach kavu shmoret yimei Chanukah b'chinat shana. Then it was established in time that every year there'll be an 8-day period where Jewish people will be able to renew their commitment internally to the self. But what's the representation of the self? The house. And that's why I think every single day, after you said a bracha, Birchot Krishma has 2 blessings. The first one ends Yotzei HaMeorot, and not once but twice. First you talk about God, you're renewing creation every day. By the end of that bracha, you're saying, God, I hope you're going to renew it for our culture, for Jewish people, or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir. And I hope we'll be meritorious to see it as a culture. But when you get to that last bracha, before you say the Shema, before you cover your eyes to make the affirmation of the Shema, what do we say? I give you an orange over here. We're asking God, put it in our hearts, so we should understand it, so we should be able to use our intellect for it, to obey, to learn, to teach, to observe, to enact, to fulfill. All the words of the learning of Torah with love. And then what do we say? We ask God. It's our prayer every day. We're asking Hashem, give us the light in our eyes. It should be the light of Torah. Yeah? Then our hearts will be cleaving to your mitzvot, and you will unite our hearts to love and to fear your name, so that we will not be shamed forever and ever. Yeah? What's the idea here? The holiday of Chanuka is the bright line in a dark culture that says, don't let your thoughts go off the rails. Make your line of defense your own household, your own Jewish environment. And that doesn't just mean the physical space, yeah? It means how one internalize it inside. And I think there are a lot of people who are searching. And particularly, I think we have a vulnerable population in our community of those who go to study. I myself did for a period of a few years on a secular campus. I'm not talking about Yeshiva University and Stern College for Women and Stern Yeshiva College. I'm not talking about people who go to Turo, right? I'm not talking about Landers. I'm talking about Bar Ilan, right? Although they have these currents also, but it's not the same thing. I'm talking about the notion that Chanukah is about that search for a new light, because the reality is that at various moments, I think there are these hinge moments in history where actually new ideologies start to become more and more ascendant, and they start to encroach. You look around. Everyone here, I'm sure, is a very thoughtful individual. You think about the world such as it is. You think about nascent movements within Judaism. Think about nascent movements that make claims to suddenly being open to the world in a newfound way, where basic assumptions about postmodernism that are running completely at loggerheads with Torah values are themselves not only adopted wholesale, but are then being promulgated as if they were always the values of Judaism. It's really hard to find this balance. For this, we need guides. And if we don't have guides that are in people, we should at least find guides in our Svarim, our Kedoshim, and in each other as strengthening ourselves as a people. Some of us in this room, to recap, were aware. We actually knew the ideals of socialism and communism. And while we may not have been communists probably ourselves, we understood there was obviously something that held many, many people in its sway. And that even though it ended up becoming a bankrupt idea, again, contemporary thinker Jordan B. Peterson and others believe that actually their ideals were just translated into a new dynamic, where instead of it being, let's look at the whole world of the rich against the poor, now it's the whole world is classified as you're either oppressed or the oppressor. There's nobody in between. It's a very radical doctrine. And that all notions of authority or any notion of sanctity or any notion of, all of that must be some kind of big power game. And the way we have to get out of it is by upending whatever the conventions are that brought us to this time. But that nihilism can be, God forbid, ruinous. And I think I see trends within our own world, within the Jewish world, of people who, they're well-intentioned perhaps, but I think deeply misguided, because they have actually not only imbibed, but they have guzzled this ideology to ruinous ends. And they promulgate it and peddle it actually with the face of this all about words like inclusion and equality and egalitarianism. All of those words have positive dynamics and dimensions, but if they are unmoored from a sense of continuity, God forbid, they can become that light which is a foreign light and not the light of Chanuka, which we are hopefully recommitting ourselves to each and every night with one more light each time. Okay. Ad Khan. Chanukah Sameach to everybody. If anyone wants to stick around and chat, you're welcome to stick around. That's a bit of a heavy thing for Chanukah, but you have to understand I think this is part of the complexity of what's unfolding on Chanukah, and that we already have some of that new light already that we have access to, Baruch Hashem, through our own devices of Torah and of Chanukiyot and of our community. Ad kan for today.